I'd like to introduce my next guest, Shelley Smith. Shelley is the founder of Premier Rapport with 35 years of experience helping over 58 companies and 6 published books. Shelley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm excited about the conversation that we're about to have. And yeah, I've got a few decades under my belt with this little thing called workplace culture, leadership development. And I always laugh and say I been out in the ocean in a hurricane and made it back to the shore, and I've got stories to tell. Let's dive into the conversation today and see what we can bubble up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Shelley, actually, before we get started and hear a bit about your history, I'd like to actually just ask you something basic. What does workplace culture mean to you? Do you have a different perspective on it than maybe the average person?
I simplify it into it's how we do what we do when we work together. So it can be two people or it can be 14,000 people. It's how we do what we do when we work together.
If you're talking about workplace culture for a smaller group, when we were talking in our pre-call, you said even if you're, alone in the home office, there's a culture there. Um, it's like, how do you identify that culture in a smaller group versus a bigger group?
Yeah. So regardless of whether you're 100% remote, hybrid, all, in the office, the interaction that you have from teammate to meet to teammate, so your communication, how you take action, how you decision make, all of those things exist. They just exist differently in smaller teams than larger teams simply because of the layers and
Hmm.
often the red tape. But it still does come down to how do we describe how we work together? How do we communicate? Again, how do we decision make? How do we take action? How do we onboard people? How do we, delegate? How do we follow up? All of those things still exist regardless of size. And
Hmm.
often, comments are made that we have a remote workforce, so we don't have a culture. Oh no, you still have a culture. It's, how do you all show up? Even the little things like, is everybody's video on?
Yeah.
How do we note take? It's all of these little interactions. I call them, droplets that either hydrate or dehydrate the team, no matter how big or small.
Yeah, I mean, what energy are you bringing to the conversation, even if you're not there in person, even if you're, talking through Zoom? Are you laying in your underwear in bed secretly, or are you actually participating and being an active member of the team and trying to, make a difference and help your colleagues and, being a positive force on the team?
Exactly. Exactly. That difference of the being satisfied with your job and doing maybe bare minimum versus fully engaged and showing up your best self with every interaction.
So, Shelley, you've become an expert in business culture. Is that something that formed naturally through your experience? Because you started in Marriott International, correct? And you were the COO in a hotel franchise. Um, so what was your journey like? Was that something that just happened organically for you, or was there intention behind the creation of your business? Maybe you can walk us through what it was like in the early stages of your career.
I think it's a little bit of both, as I look back. So I guess it's more of it happened by accident, but when I look back, I was like, oh, it was building all along. I mean, I'm going to go all the way back to my early childhood formative years. I worked at a very young age at my parents' auction house and flea market on the weekends. And I remember the first time that my dad took me around with the money belt to introduce me to all the vendors. I mean, I was probably, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. I was really young. And I remember his intentional handshake, introduction, the way that they interacted with him and vice versa, and that passing of the baton and teaching me that the relationships and the respect matter, straight up. And then my mom had, the daytime job during the week, but on the weekends she was the bookkeeper. She was the, the cash till collector, and she knew what was off in the numbers before the numbers, showed anything just by how people were, showing up. So I say that those formative years about relationships and the importance of connecting with people were always there. Fast forward into my Marriott days, Marriott culture is day one, you hear that it treat your employees right and everything else falls into place. And I literally lived and breathed that for 14 years with them. So that coupled with the structure of the people and the processes. And then I moved into the franchise world on the hotel side, two different companies, great experiences into horrible experiences in that I was completely burnout and disengaged because of the disconnection, the shift that had happened in the culture. One of them I was with for 8 years. The first seven were glorious, the last one not so much. Shift in the culture. Wasn't naming it that then. When I said, "Gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. What do I want to do?" and I talked to a franchise broker, they actually pitched. This is now 20 years ago. They pitched executive coaching and peer board review, and I laughed and said, "People make money at that." That was before like everybody was a coach. And short story, I purchased a franchise, had it for a year, sold it. It was executive coaching and peer board. And then I was in a conversation with my business coach on a VIP strategy day. And we got started. We sat down and she said, "Okay, so I've looked at your website. I've gotten up to speed what you do inside of workplace culture." And she was just talking. I was like, "Wait, back up." The way that she described it was the first time that it was put into that clarity in words. And so now that's how I've come to realize it was never about the brick and mortar. It was always about the people. It was always about the leadership, the mentorship, the advising, the guidance, the ecosystem, the culture. And I realized that every single step along the way, I had created my own process of doing that. And then that's when my hydration model has come to life, how I analyze things, how I curate things and create them.
Okay, right on. Yeah, you always had the knowledge in you from a young age, from those experiences, like that formation you had. And it's crazy how we carry those things through our life, and then it's only later on that we can realize, this has been kind of the core of my understanding, but I didn't even understand that I understood it, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
exactly. Exactly. You were walking the walk and, talking the talk, and then you're like, "Oh, that's the path. That's how I got here." Oh, it wasn't an overnight woke up and you changed and, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah.
hmm And so after you had your experience, going through all these steps in your career, like what was it that brought you to Premier Rapport and during the middle of a recession? Was that something that was relevant to the timing of your business or just happenstance?
When I look back, I was probably quite foolish doing what I did at the time I did it because of everything that was happening in the economy in the world. Um, but I've always been a risk taker, and I knew that again, the brick and the mortar wasn't my thing anymore. That there had to be another way. Now I'm in my early 40s at this point. I've got three kids. My husband had been diagnosed with MS, and there had to be a better way. There had to be a better path. And so, with that, I jumped in and started the business. And I was always in the operation side. So, I really had to put myself out there on the selling side. So, I went to every networking event known to man. And, there wasn't a plan B. I
Yeah.
got in, I had to do it. I had to, learn the ropes and figure out what I could figure out, made a lot of mistakes. And the birth of, again, Premier Rapport as it is today happened along the way.
hmm Yeah, that's one of the things when you're founding a business, right? It's sink or swim. So the businesses that make it, it's because you just hustled and you put that effort in, right? And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's the the one factor that every person I talk to says the same thing, no matter what business you're in. It's that they had to put the effort in and the hours were crazy at the start and it's
Yes.
just it's a lot of grind to get it done and
Yes.
that
And hustle
determination
is the
that
right
makes it
word. Yes. A lot of resiliency, a lot of determination, understanding you're going to hear a lot of no's and a lot of oops, and just keep going. Just keep going.
Actually, before you walk us through the business that you set up and we can kind of get an understanding of the culture inquiry, um, maybe we could actually have an idea of what it looked like when you were first understanding, like when you were first establishing the culture in the hotel franchise that you found this lack of culture and you were struggling with that, but you mentioned that you were actually making efforts to improve it. So, before you had established your system, like what did that look like when you were, going on this culture inquiry in your early life?
So things that I was doing that I didn't realize I always did, I call them now in today's world, I call them listening tours, meaning I would go on site and on location with the different hotels and the teams and, get in the dish room with them in the kitchen and, during the busiest time and just work alongside of them and have conversations to find out really what was going on, good, bad, or indifferent. Get to know people, making sure that I remained in the depths of and understood and not disconnected. I found that, and this goes to the story of the last year of disconnection, year and a half, is the owners. There was two different families. The owners and had become disconnected. So everybody gets in business to make money and survive this thing called life, right? So there's healthy ways of making money, and then there's ways that I don't are not being good humans. And for both of those companies, I had started to experience that. So things that I did was I tried to remain relevant and to know what was actually happening day to day at the hotels, from the maintenance department to the housekeepers. And in going all the way back when I got in the hotel business, I started off as a desk clerk, and then I went into the restaurant side, and then I ended up in housekeeping. So I've cleaned a lot of rooms, I've washed a lot of dishes, I've been there, done that, lived that, understand that none of those jobs are easy, and they're all difficult in different ways, and everybody's role is important. And I think me remaining grounded as I continued to move up in organizations is what made it different, and I still have that approach today.
I mean, that resonates with me so much, and my experience in life as well. Having someone in a position of leadership that's willing to get their hands dirty with you, get down in there and dig you out of the mud and make sure everything's going smoothly and have that friendship actually at the end of the day where you feel open to be able to talk about things, and if something isn't feeling right, like, you feel comfortable expressing yourself, and then the situation can be improved before it gets to a critical mass. And anyone that's in a position of leadership that thinks they're kind of like holier than thou and won't touch at work with a 10-foot stick, you're gonna find this separation and this lack of connection with the people under you, and you're going to lose something there. That disconnect grows, and it's gonna fester.
That's exactly what those are examples of the dehydration. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's all these little things at a time, to your point. So spot on.
hmm No, I mean, yeah, just I've seen it so many times in my life, and working in the film industry for a while, like quite a while. It's one of the things you see this kind of gap between the people who are the kind of underlings on set, and you have the executives. So, there's almost a disdain, I think you could say, towards the producers, because all the people are there working really hard, doing long hours, and then the producers are there in their air-conditioned tents with the VIP service and the champagne being brought to them, and it's like there's just a complete disconnect between them and like what the actual process is to make the movie, and it's funny to see. So maybe you could walk me through what taking those lessons in your earlier life looked like when you applied it into a business model, and also when a company calls you, maybe you can walk us through the process of like how you enter that situation, and how you start addressing it, how you identify where the problems are.
Yeah. Um, so a couple of things, depending on who calls me inside of the organization, is it is becomes the starting point in a different way depending on who calls. So meaning if it's somebody from human resources or somebody from the finance team, somebody in operations, sales versus the CEO or the board member, the conversations are a little different. So first is establishing what is the pain point? Why are you calling me? how long has this been a problem? So some of those usual things that you ask, what have you done in the past? What's worked? What hasn't? What are your goals? What are you looking for? And then from there, and that is no different from when you go to a doctor. You go into the doctor's office, why are you here today? You tell the story. The nurse comes in, why are you here today? You tell the story again. The doctor comes in, why are you here today? You tell the story again. And then they say, well, we need you to take some tests. So what I do is no different from that. It's not healthy to start prescribing something before you really unpack what's going on. And for me, that's the detect stage. And so through those conversations, depending on what the pain point is, what the outcome they're seeking is, it helps me determine the course of action. So if it's a full culture inquiry, I'm going in, I'm looking at what they have from lagging indicators, which would be their dashboard of turnover, profitability, employee engagement surveys, retention scores, exit interviews, things that they've captured after the fact, because those are lagging indicator dashboard things. And then I go out on the floor, whatever the floor is. I have one-on-one conversations with small groups and/or people individually to talk about how do you describe the culture? Give me 3 words. How do what do you like? What do you wish? What do you wonder? And then I take, which is now the quantitative and the qualitative information, and I pull it together and I look at what's in their handbook. What are the words on the wall? What does it say on their website about their mission, vision, and values? What have I heard? And then from there, I start to see where there is either alignment or misalignment. And then I put together a plan for that. So coming out of that analysis and detection allows me to start to move into rehydrating whatever it is that I'm seeing and then I've heard, and then we've got some goals. So now we're starting to create that.
Yeah.
We're starting to create and get into the action planning of that. And then depending on what the goals are in the process, when we come out of that, we've built champions that can sustain what it is that I've done since I've been in there, because I'm not in there every single day, every single waking hour. So they can sustain it after I leave. And then that puts us into, how do we tend to this? So, another way to look at it is preventative maintenance versus the urgent care and emergency room. Another way to look at it is from a gardening perspective. You can't just buy a plant, put it in dirt, set it, and it's good. You've got to tend to it and maintain it. It's the same thing with our ecosystem of our culture. If somebody comes in with hiring focus, then I'll start with the tool that I use, Predictive Index. If they come in and they call me and say, hey, can you come in and do a communication class for us, then we unpack the what, the when, the how, the why for that. So just to give you a few different, examples of that. Sometimes people have actually stopped me after they've seen me do a keynote presentation and they want to know more. And then that starts the conversation as well. But regardless of what it is, I'm still having the detection, analyzing conversation. I'm still doing that creation in order to start to hydrate whatever I've seen, and then I'm tending. So regardless, that 3-point of the framework is always happening in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Man, that's very cool. I'm very curious as well how this works when you're picking your champions and your experience like going through and talking to the employees. I mean, do you find that people are usually more open to come forth with their issues, or do you feel like people sometimes are ever afraid of negatively impacting their job? Or like what is that interpersonal relationship like with the people when you're trying to map out the culture of a
Well, I
place?
definitely have to build the trust. And it is, it's interesting. Sometimes it's easier as an outside person that the trust is automatically there because you're not into the thick of things and you don't have any, history or baggage inside of the company. And then sometimes there's a lot of hesitation because it's like we've been there, we've done that. They've hired consultants before, you're the flavor of the month, and sometimes it's more difficult to get there. But again, I go back to my words matter and my actions matter. So if somebody tells me something and I say I'm going to do XYZ, I do XYZ and I come back and let them know, hey, we talked about, I did this. let me know where we're at now. So it does take me showing up and matching my words in order to build that trust. When it comes to the champions, it's typically people who I've been watching and observing that are really engaged, that are in
Right.
it to win it, that, have been open in sharing, or maybe they were resistant at first and then they started drinking the Kool-Aid. And so those are the champions that you want because you now have won favor of the negative person. The negative contagion is now your positive contagion. And so when you can win the negative bunch, it is it's just a cakewalk after that because the negative ones are usually the ones that pull the group down quicker than the positive ones. So champions come from all of those, different sections. It is important that champions live and breathe at different levels of the organization. And if an organization has multiple locations, that multiple locations are also, represented too. And then from there, they're given high level guidance, but they're also given authority, autonomy, empowerment in order to bring things up that just aren't going right. Like if we start to slide, that they're the ones who, go, wait a minute, and they're able to pull it back. So they end up being critical. Before I really feel good about leaving the client and saying, okay, I think you're ready to go on your own. It's almost that parental thing. I've done everything I can do. I've taught you
That's,
everything that I can teach you, and now it's up to you to do the right thing. And finding those champions is really important to help keep those guardrails on.
yeah, I love that, like taking the bad and making it into the good kind of philosophy, or like, picking out those people that are the most resistant and, making them your allies, because then it's like, okay, you know that you've really solidified your point and like you've maximized the outcome of your efforts at that point. So if you can
100%.
hold them as like part of the team that's, continuing the re-education of culture, then I mean, yeah, it sounds like it's a very effective way to have a lasting impact. The employees are, fairly open, it sounds like for the most part. Um, but I mean, when it comes to culture, they're usually the ones that are more open because they're usually more concerned about the culture, whereas the CEOs usually think that things are going better than they actually are.
Yes.
So, I mean, just do you have any thoughts on like that line of thinking? Like, how is it that there can be such a divide between the CEO's assumption of the culture in a workplace and what's actually going on the ground floor? I mean, I guess it goes back to what you said at the start, when they're just not in there with them.
Correct. That's it. They're not having conversations. They are busy being busy, and they've removed themselves, and they don't realize they've removed themselves. They've delegated with trust, and they think they've hired people to do all the right things, but you've got to be able to take your foot off of the gas. And so you can be big picture elsewhere, but you cannot be so far removed from the pedal and the gas and the brake that you're not stopping and checking in and refueling with the team. If you don't, when I say meet people where they are, it's literally and figuratively. So figuratively, it would be leaning into people's needs around their behavioral hardwiring and what motivates them. Literally meeting where they are is don't call them to your office. Go to where they are. Meeting on their ground, their turf. It just creates a different security mechanism. And I don't
Yeah,
feel like I'm in trouble coming to the principal's office because I got called in to the owner, to the board meeting, to the HR's office, to my boss's office, that my boss, it's that availability that you're seeing. And if I need you, I know I'm not going to have to wait that long because you're here. You're
yeah,
really here.
yeah. Yeah, and showing your face to everyone else as well. If someone's just in a boardroom all the time or in their office, just like having that once or twice a day that you see the person, I think it makes a difference in terms
It's
of
it's
just
the
like
human it's the human
how you
connection.
feel. Yes, you
Yeah.
feel more connected to them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when they don't do that, then the disconnect happens. When I'm sitting in my meeting with my direct reports from an executive standpoint, I'm hearing it's an echo chamber. So if I trust everything that I hear and I do not verify it, then I get lost in that disconnection. I see it all the time from a lagging indicator, which would be an employee engagement survey. When you start to break down tenure and you start to break down titles in the org chart, and the executives, the C-suite has a completely different perspective than the rest of the team, and they're scratching their head and they're dismissing, well, we all think it's great. We don't see it that way. Well, they have a different perspective than you, and when's the last time you went to see through their eyes and their perspective, and you may see something different.
So when you have a company that is in, a place where they really need some help, where there is this disconnect. I mean, if the the problem is because the CEO is disconnected, meaning that they wouldn't know that there's a problem, then how does that work that you end up getting there? Like you mentioned to me that, you have a lot of references that, bring people into your circle. But
Mm-hmm.
like if someone is unaware that they have a culture problem, then how do they meet you? How does that work?
So the companies that have leadership overall, they do not understand value. When we talk about workplace culture, I never hear from them because they don't get it, they don't understand it. They keep living how they're living, and they're getting the results that they're getting that could be dramatically better if they did. So those people aren't the ones that called. Those are the ones you hear blasted in negative media. The big companies that get in trouble and you hear it on the news. Those are people who don't get it and who are not watching. The ones that do get it is somebody from a decision making standpoint is reaching out to me, and so they're bringing me in to give it an outside perspective to the executive team or to the owner, and my job is to show them there could be a better way and your numbers can be better. Again, we're in business, so everything I do has to have a return on the investment. So it's that, unknowingly, you're what you're not seeing 9 to 12 months before you see them in your dashboard going from green to yellow to red. I can help you with that. And if I were to help you with that and it impacted positively on your top line and bottom line sales, is that a risk you're willing to take? And so it's being able to shift to say there's a better way. So when I'm able to do that connection, then that's when I'm brought in. I do have a lot of tough conversations along the way when I am brought in, and it is leadership. You're the problem. It's not your team. Your team is all in. You've hired right. They're good. They're knowledgeable. They're showing up. They're begging you for hydration. Are you going to give it to them or not? And that's when I have rarely. I'm not going to say never. I rarely have a decision maker when they see the breadth of it that they say we don't need your service. The glasses come off and now they can see, and
Yeah.
so that's important that I'm able to.
Yeah, they woke up from the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So I mean, that seems like a shame though, because like if the people that need it the most are unwilling to look up for help, like, wouldn't there be a way that you could, display some of the metrics and use that to convince the people who need your help the most that this is something that they need, that they have to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that something that you incorporate into your outreach or into your conversation when you're starting to look at someone becoming a client? You can demonstrate, these results, like a certain ROI or anything like this. Is that how do you strategize
100%.
your
Yeah, we talk
conversations?
we talk about, what are you measuring? What are you looking at? What's the frequency in which you look at that? What impacts whatever that is? And then we back into it to go, okay, root cause, when we do this, this, and this affects that number that you're tracking. And then that's when we back into whatever that system, that process, including the human beings are, in order to make those results better. If I can draw that very clear picture, the risk, because remember, every decision is predicated on risk, every decision. So
Yes.
if I can mitigate the perception of the risk versus the reward, then the answer is always going to be yes, we will do this during this time frame and we expect this result by X. If we're getting that, great. If we're not, we're going to part ways. And I don't go into it. I'm an over deliverer, not an under deliverer. So if I know something's really going to shift within 90 days, then I probably am saying 90 days to 6 months, but I know I'm going to hit that, 90-day
Yeah.
mark, for
Yeah, always
that.
give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I know my philosophy in all walks of life is, you know, hope for the best, expect the best, but then also plan and prepare for the worst. Give yourself that wiggle room. Like, you know that everything is going to be fine, but like, just give yourself that extra cushion, do that extra preparation. So just in case something kind of ends up going sideways, then you know you're going to be all right and you're still going to, reach your destination. So I'm sure there's been some people that, really needed your help that you were able to get through to. Can you maybe like tell us a couple of stories, or do you have one memory of a culture crisis that was like really drastic that you were able to save? Like maybe like that one big fish in your career.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few that are coming to mind. I work with a lot of manufacturing clients, and so one of these, it was a new plant manager that was hired. They'd been there about 6 months, and I got a phone call. He had been referred to me by a mutual colleague, and I met with two people. I met with the plant manager and the HR person. The HR person had been there for a while. So through the conversation, he had come from a previous experience into this, and he's like, the culture is working against us. The HR person's like, yeah, it's been like this for a while. All the dashboard numbers were, red and yellow. So they needed a lot of help. So yeah. So I had a conversation with them, which led to a conversation with the general manager and the COO, HR, CFO. Uh, there was five of them in the room. So we had a conversation and they started to look at things in a different way. That led to a 5-year contract. We started off with 3 years. They extended twice. We did a lot of things. Met with, roughly had 200 employees at that particular plant. I met all shifts every month the first year. We had 6 different sessions that were team building sessions. So I was there for all 3 shifts and we unpacked things. I had a lot of one on one conversations. After the first year, the conversation had completely shifted from what is this culture thing into I get it now, all levels. I get it now. Turnover reduced, turnover reduced dramatically. Their
Wow.
employee engagement survey was, did a 180. The other plants were calling them going, hey, what's going on with you guys? Like what happened? They started winning safety awards that they had not won before. And
Hmm.
we kept going. We kept going. We included not just the team building, we did the internal university for them as well. So we helped with the succession planning, which helped with the recruitment, the retention, and just all of the numbers until we really dove in. And so that was a very, very rewarding experience. And I still stay in contact with them, check in every now and then. How's it going? Obviously, we established the champions that were there. There was a lot of leaders who needed to go. There was, I hate using the word toxic, but it was a toxic environment. There were people who had been there for years and very siloed, very stuck in their ways. This is how we do it here. This is how we've always done it here. I mean, you think manufacturing, you think the consistency, right? They had consistency all right, but it wasn't good consistency of what they were doing in the different lines. It was very much the us versus them, the administrative office versus the plant. And so there was a lot. They needed a lot of hydration, but that was a good.
It's like it.
Hopefully, that was a good story too.
Yeah, well, luckily you were there for them. Jeez. I just had one question though for myself and for the audience. You mentioned you set up the university there. But
Mhm.
that's a separate program that you install besides the champions? Maybe you could explain that for us.
Yeah. So I call it sometimes we end up calling it XYZ University, meaning the company's name university. It's an internal academy that you groom your team the way that you want. So it includes technical skills as well as soft skills. I usually teach the soft skill side, or I've got a group of consultants that I'll bring in, as well as the technical. So when you think about typical higher ed, the higher ed is inside of your organization. So it's your words, your culture, your language. It's how you do what you do when you work together. So instead of shipping people out to get training on one offs, we build that curriculum and that 4 year university, so to speak, inside of the walls of your team. So I do that a lot, and that always yields incredible results from everything that most companies track.
Sounds yeah, that sounds great. Like you have a very thorough way of making sure that the change that you impart to them, it stays like systemic and is going to be able to perpetuate itself,
Yes,
hopefully for
we
the
want to make it
rest of
stick.
the existence of the company.
Yeah, we don't want to do any one off. A one off thing never works, doesn't stick. That's the flavor of the month. It's not one thing, it's multiple things that you have to do in order to have a very healthy ecosystem.
No. And you mentioned that you bring in contractors for this university program that you do. But like,
Mhm.
maybe you could tell us a little bit what your team looks like. Do you, as normally when you're going through the transformation of the company, are you bringing in other contractors, or do you have a team that always works with you? Like, and how does that work? Also, like as someone who's teaching leadership, like, you obviously take those same teachings and apply it to your team, or do you have any like special things that you do that maybe don't make it onto the playbook for the others.
Sure. Great question. When I started my business, had the office, I had a couple of employees, and then after the first year, I learned that again, I started off as executive coaching and peer board. I was always going to the client. I didn't need an office. And I didn't need people on payroll. I needed people that I could plug and play based on what I need. So then I moved to a complete 1099 model. And today I have a staff, so the W-2 typical employee, and then I've got a team of consultants or other specialties like people who are, in marketing specialty that I'll pull in for maybe branding that I'm doing for the university, and we want everything to be, consistent. So then I also have the 1099 people. The ones that I will bring in to teach a class are people who I've worked with over the years. I've seen in action. I trust them and their styles align with my teaching style as well, and that's really important because it's my name out there, and so I want to make sure consistent. I've got a person, for example, who does everything to do with psychological safety. I always use the same person who's going to come in and teach that. I've got a couple of people who can do the emotional intelligence with me. If I've am already booked, then I've got somebody else that can come in and do the EQI, stuff. I've got a couple of people who are really creative at different team building, um, experiential activities, and I've got people that I can, call for that as well. And then I have the usual suspects from administrative behind the scenes for that as well. So I like to have people who are doing what it is that they love to do and to pull them in instead of making them an employee and adding all these other things that they don't love doing. So I want to meet consultants where they are as well and to pull people in. It just makes sense because then you're really getting an expert and you're getting somebody who's really passionate about what they do.
Hmm. No, it sounds like you've built quite the impressive team, and like you're handpicking everyone so they're doing something that they love to do, which passion always breeds the best results. You're growing, obviously, and you've come from just working with contractors to having it sounds like a 20 or more person team. Do you have like any plans for the future to continue growing into a firm or anything like that, or what is your kind of your goal or desire for Premier Rapport?
Yeah, it's shifted over the years as well. At first it was a lifestyle, just trying to keep food on the table and the roof on the head and or overhead. And then it shifted into I've got three kids, and so some of them have had interest. One of them is a full time, the other two are part time, doing other things that are in the business. To do you want to take over this business into what we're building and growing in order to sell it one day? So we'll see where that kind of that lands, but we're keeping our eyes open for what the possibilities are, because I obviously at some point will retire. So it's a matter of, are they going to take it over, or am I going to sell it completely, or go with a PE firm, or so there's a lot of opportunities there as well.
Right. Yeah, the kids are interested in partaking, but they're not sure if it's like really,
Their
you
thing,
know,
their
their
jam.
passion. Like,
Yeah, I don't think they want to work as hard as I do. They say I work too many hours. I'm like, it's not. It doesn't feel like work when you're doing things that you love to do. But yeah,
I mean,
eventually,
hey, when everyone is like an influencer nowadays, and this is the benchmark being set for people, you know,
yeah, yeah.
no,
That's
no,
the that's it. That's when the reality. I was watching somebody the other day, and you talked about having people in the things you're passionate about. Your skills and your natural abilities have to help you make money when you're young, and they
yeah,
may not completely connect to what you're really passionate about, right? So you have to be mindful that you can't tell everybody just follow your heart, follow your dreams. Well, you got to make money too, and
yeah,
sometimes those don't meet at the same intersection in your timeline
yeah.
for that. So yes, you're not wrong in your comment.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of friends that would love to just be, skiing every day, but
Sure, who wouldn't?
you can only be a ski instructor half the year, you know.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, who wouldn't want all that freedom?
You know, I actually had like a question that came to mind earlier, and I was wanting to see about, how this affected culture, because you started your business during a kind of a tumultuous time during the recession in 2008, 2009. We had a pretty big a shock in 2020, 2019 with COVID, and I feel like that would have been something that really affected the culture space. Like, and from your point of view and your experience with your business, like what did that look like? Did culture degrade during that time because all of a sudden everyone has left the office, or did it improve some way? Or like, could you
Great
maybe
question.
debrief us on what that looked like through your
I
lens?
went from the comments of culture's a nice to have pre-March 2020 into the realization that, oh my gosh, our culture, because we didn't name it, pay attention to it, and hydrate it, we're dying right now.
Yeah,
Or it helped people survive. So when everybody went remote, nobody had been there before. It was all new territory. Clients that I had, that the C-suite owned it and said, "We've never been here before. We don't know what to do. I need your help along the way." Those are the ones who ended up crushing it and innovating and growing and moving fast and sustaining, because they understood with full clarity now how to lean in as a leader, and to lean in to protect their culture, because it does shift. It's still a culture, but how you communicate changes, for example, in a full remote than it is, in person. It's a little bit more challenging, but it can still be done. The owners, the leaders that literally hid, did not turn on the cameras, did not put out announcements, did not do communications and town halls and all the right things, that hid behind and were fear and frozen and didn't want to admit that they needed help. They didn't want to admit they'd never been there before. They didn't know what to do. Those are ones that got fired, replaced, retired, companies, the doors closed. So for me in my business, it helped me, because all of a sudden this nice to have, oh, this isn't nice to have. We need to clarify. What is our culture? What do we want it to be? Where are we at? How do we keep it strong? How do we strengthen it? How do we pivot? So massive shifts, to your point. I already had the tagline "Culture Matters" before all the other matters came out.
Yeah.
So the culture matters piece, I wish I would have trademarked it. I could have already retired.
Human genius.
Because, you know, that hashtag is out there and is used all over the place all the time. Because I was already in that space, I didn't have to go through and figure it out. I didn't have to say I told you so. That's really when the growth of my business actually shifted because people weren't kicking and screaming anymore and saying that's a nice to have. They were, we got to have it, we got to figure it out. So that's how it impacted what I saw, clients that I had, and then new clients that came on because of all those things. And these are still conversations that we have today about return to work. Companies are still struggling with that big time.
So wait, just to clarify, you did actually like your company grew a lot because of COVID and because people needed to adapt, correct? Like
Correct.
that was right.
Correct.
And
I was
that,
in the space at the right time for sure.
yeah, and I mean, it sounds like, based on that, that you have another opportunity now than, I mean, you said that you're talking about AI all the time with our previous conversation. I mean, this is another huge shakeup in terms of how businesses are going to run, and it's going to affect the culture too, because, I mean, you're not going to be going and talking to your superior for help. You're going to be asking the AI chatbot that has been, schooled in all of the different data points of the business, and it's going to reduce the amount of interaction that you have between the coworkers. So, I mean,
Yes.
what do
If
you
done
think about
wrong,
how it's going to change things now, like this adoption of AI into businesses?
so the last probably, I'm going to say 24 months, the phone calls have moved out of can you do a communication class to can you do a skills assessment and knowledge assessment of what competencies do we need with all things coming in with all things AI. And so that has shifted in. And with that, if you have a new AI first initiative, you also still have to have a culture first initiative running side by side. Because if not, people are worried, rightfully so, at all levels about what is AI going to do for me, my job, for my family, the impact of that. So the communication and the continuation of what right looks like inside of their culture is really important. So the ultimately, remember AI is a tool. It's how you use the tool properly that is going to aid you and your team or not. So an example would be instead of all the administrative duties at any role, every role has admin duties. The percentage is different. Percentage of time to do it. But if 40% of my time is administrative, data, analytics, number crunching, writing emails, things that absolutely AI can do for you. Well, what do I do with my time now that I have time back? Well, you lean into your people and your team and your relationships. And so now it's easier for you to meet people where they are physically. It's easier for you to have the conversation because now I have the time. I'm not burnt out. I'm not, the meeting is a different kind of meeting now. So when done right, AI as a tool is helping you from your automation and administration so you can have the conversations. So it should help us connect and repair that socialization that has been completely dehydrated. The poor kids at all levels of school, from elementary, the ones that were born in 2020, into the ones that graduated higher ed, how that socialization crushed, just completely crushed. And those people are coming into the workforce now, and thus dehydration, thus the book Thirsty.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a tangent. You got my button going on that
No,
one.
no, I love that because I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I've said almost the exact same thing to some other guests that I've had in the podcast when we've gone down this line of thinking, where it's like, I really do believe as well that the introduction of AI is actually going to benefit our culture and our interactions, and we're going to, be able to reinvest that time that is given to us into, maybe going back into the workplace or going and having those sit down meetings and not being so distant from each other, just doing everything through Zoom and through email. And we can regain a little bit of the connectivity through that.
And breathe. Get
Yeah.
some time back to breathe and
Yeah.
not work,
Staring
Siri
at the
and
screen.
go skiing. you know,
Um,
that realization. Yep.
I mean, I think that it's scary because it's shaking up everything, but at the end of the day, like it's going to be beneficial for all of us. Who knows what is going to have to be put in place in order to kind of stabilize everything at the end, but I mean, I don't see how it's going to impact us negatively, you know. It's going to be like any, big revelation. It's going to be an upheaval in our society, but I think it's all going to be for the good. And I think that it's going to
I hope so too.
maybe be able to transition us away from the work week that keeps going up in hours. You know, maybe this is the point where we can actually realize, lowering the 40-hour work week, going to 6 hours a day like they're doing in France, you know.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And we won't have to continually talk about anxiety, stress, burnout. We shall see. We'll have, you and I will have our positive contagion thoughts and manifest into
Exactly,
that.
exactly. So maybe we can leave this off with a couple last tidbits. You can give us your expectation of the future. Where do you see workplace culture going now? Yeah, I mean, we kind of said we see it improving, but maybe on a more technical side, do you see that, at least in your business model, like it's going to become more data driven and tech enabled through AI, or
It
is it
is,
going to
but
stay more
also
fundamentally human?
I think that some of the trends are going to continue. So we're going to see where the return to work falls. We're going to see where AI ends up falling and transforming. We're going to see a continued customization of a full compensation for employees. So, what I mean by that is the compensation of salary and benefits. We're going to see that expansion of the different type of benefits, that a la carte, and that this job pays 60,000, 120,000, whatever it is, but you get to pick that bucket of that total compensation. That trend has started, and I think we're going to see that trend continue. The work life balance with unlimited PTOs, those conversations, those are going to continue. That desire for the 4-day work week, the 6 hours, those things are going to continue. And people having multiple streams of income, that's going to continue. I think there's going to be more 1099ers versus employees because of that in different industries as well. So those are my forecasting trends. We see where we're going to land. And there's going to be a lot of shifts between now and 2030. 2030 and I would say 2035 because of all of those different elements. The work today is going to be dramatically different than the work we do and the type of jobs we have in 2030. Dramatically different because of the speed of technology. So
Yeah.
that's my forecasting as we start to put a wrap on this.
Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate. I mean, it's just because every year, like, I still can't believe we've only had ChatGPT for a couple of years, and that's already like so outdated. It's insane,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
It's like you look at the first models of ChatGPT that we got, and it's like looking at a typewriter, you know? Like,
correct.
like
Correct.
our frame
Again,
of
the
reference
speed of
was fine.
technology. I remember when I'm dating myself, when I was a carrier, I was a ticket carrier for airline tickets. So I would get in my car to deliver the tickets to the company who just ordered it from the company I worked for, into the fax machine, into the scanners, into the telephones. All of these are just updated technology. AI has just whoosh, um, all of those things. So we
Yeah,
don't
the
know where.
graph is going like this, and it's just going straight up
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So,
I guess we kind of brushed on this as well. I wanted to ask you one last question about your business, but you mentioned that you have the plans to sell it, but before then, like, what's next for Premier Rapport? What
so
does the
speaking of
next
all things
what does that
AI,
journey look like, evolving
yeah.
with
So
AI?
we are working diligently behind the scenes for more automation ourselves and standing up things that are inside of my brain to get them into an agent that customers can more we can meet more customers with where they are, the ones that either can't afford to or are not ready to bring myself and the team in. that they can dial into Shelley's brain and to get some of the work. So think about my last book, Thirsty. It's got 3 sections. One's a fable, one's more like a higher education book, but the third one's the playbook. So think about the playbook live. So we're working on that behind the scenes, and hopefully that will get released sometime in 2026 as well. The challenge is what we were just talking about. Things are moving so fast. Every time we get something up, there's something else that's changed inside of that widget, and now we're having to, realign and to choose a different model. Yeah, other than that, continued growth, wanting to work for companies and larger companies with multiple locations that understand this little thing called culture is a really big thing. So that's what we're hoping. That's what we're hoping to do.
Okay, right on. And maybe you could leave us then with some words of wisdom to wrap things up, like a piece of advice that you could give to a founder building a team for those who are starting, and then for everyone, just the best piece of business advice that you ever received.
They're probably kind of similar. Be mindful of your calendar. And what I mean by that is how you spend your time is very telling. So if you say that you're all about the culture, you're all about the team, you're all about leadership, you're all about development, but your calendar suggests that you don't have any one-on-one meetings, that you're not meeting people where they are, you're busy being busy, then you're not aligned with what you're saying is important and what you're actually doing. So be mindful of your calendar. Your calendar says a lot about you and what is truly the priority. And coupled with that is asking yourself, what role are you playing today? How are you showing up today? What did you do today to hydrate the relationships in your life? One droplet at a time, because it's an everyday thing. And that is whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for a while, whether you've retired, whether you're 16, 18 listening to this by chance, or whether you're 86 and you're still the chairman.